What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the stream. And as you can see, we are in spring training of the 2026 season. And in this episode, we're going to be recapping our second off season. Wasn't as crazy of one as last year. I kind of kept it simple, just tried to fill out the roster as best I could. So without further ado, let's get to some of the moves. So one of my top priorities this offseason was trying to fill out the top end of my rotation. I was trying to go after a couple of guys like Marcus Stroman, and I tried to bring back Lucas Giolito to Chicago, but both of those guys wanted longer-term deals and got some more lucrative offers. So I ended up settling with Griffin Canning, who has actually had a pretty good franchise to date. Still young at 29 years old, so we're going to have him around for 2 seasons, sign him to a 2-year, $23 million contract. Might look to move him at the deadline this year. He's pitching well. It just kind of depends on how some of the things shake out. But if we don't, he will be around for next year and should help shore up the top end of our rotation. Additionally, I really wanted to emphasize veteran leadership on our roster because we have a lot of really young guys who don't really understand the professional game quite yet. So I went after a guy like Michael Wacha. You see the 12 years of MLB service time. He has a total of 293 starts in his career. He's nothing crazy anymore. You see the ERAs are above 4 the last 2 years, but the component ERAs and FIPs are not in bad positions. He's got a pretty decent makeup, should be able to eat some innings for us. We did only sign him to a 1-year deal, $9.6 million, but a guy who I think could provide some good mentorship for some of our young pitchers and even fetch something at the deadline. Keeping with the theme of veteran leadership and shoring up certain parts of our team, we wanted to shore up the back end of our bullpen. So we went and got Paul Sewald, sitting there, 35 years old, 78 overall, B potential. He's been really good the last 2 years. He started in Arizona, was with the Angels last year. ERAs below 3 each of the last 2 years, matching up with some good FIPs and component ERAs. This guy should be a pretty strong reliever for us. I got a lot of upside arms in the bullpen, but nobody who's really true, lock it down and proven. So a guy like Sewald will be a good addition to the bullpen. In addition, we went and picked up Lou Trevino, who's going to slide into our setup role. Only those 6 years of experience. He did miss a couple of years, 23 and 24, with injuries as he recovered. But he did make it back in the majors last year with the New York Yankees. You see him, he put up a decent ERA with solid FIP and component ERAs as well. So he will be another solid addition to our bullpen. While I like some of the young guys in our lineup to date, I still wanted another big, consistent bat in the middle of our lineup, so we went out and signed Josh Bell. There was a few first baseman and third baseman because I was looking for some type of a corner infielder that were available. Somebody like Eugenio Suarez, a Wilmer Flores, even Rhys Hoskins is out there after a couple of really good seasons. But those other guys really wanted to sign with contenders. Bell was the only guy looking to sign with somebody like our team. So you check out the slash line last year with Miami, and he was also traded mid-season. I do not know who. Pretty good season, 280, 349, and 469. Check out his WARs the last 2 seasons, 0.6 with Miami in 24, but a 2.2 last year. So a guy who takes plenty of walks, puts the ball in play at a good rate, should be a nice fit right in the middle of our lineup. Finally, I wanted to go out and get a right-handed bat. I tried to target somebody like Austin Hayes, who is already above his 6 years of MLB service time, but he was not interested in taking a bench role. So we went after Stuart Fairchild, who was non-tendered by the Arizona Diamondbacks after last year. But he had a decent season with Cincinnati in 2024. So I'm pretty excited to get this kid around. Pretty decent pop in his bats, good contact numbers against lefties, strong defender, and good athleticism to boot. He should be a good fit alongside some of the lefties on our team like Jackson Merrill, Spencer Jones, as well as Colton Cowser and Dominic Fletcher. And the final move I made this offseason, I again played the waiver wire. The Pittsburgh Pirates DFA'd Luis Ortiz, and I was looking for some depth options in my rotation, so I went out there and I snagged him off of waivers. You see he has not pitched in the majors since 2023. No appearances at all in this franchise, but at a 75 overall, I think he's like 76, 77 potential, a nice depth option, and somebody who's going to compete for compete for a rotation spot this spring. And before we kick off spring training and look at some of our position battles, just take a look at our lineups against right-handed pitchers as well as lefties, which is absolutely identical. Then you take a look at our rotation slots. We're going to have these 5 guys competing for one final spot in the rotation. Whoever doesn't make it from those guys will also be competing with all these guys outside of Wacha and Sewald, of course. We'll be competing with these guys for the final 3 bullpen slots as well. So let's sim spring training and see who wins those spots. And here we are at the end of spring training. This is how our rotation is going to shake out. You see the top four, which was already known coming into spring training. And Kobe Allard pitched very well again in spring training after having some pretty good appearances near the tail end of last year. He's going to win that 5th rotation spot. Looking at the bullpen, Jake Eater did win that 2nd lefty spot in the bullpen. Nate Pearson is out of options, but he also had a decent spring, so we're going to see what he can do. It's sink or swim time for him, much like it was for Davey Garcia last year. Wilson, Garcia, Cousins, Schuster, Trevino, and Sewell were all locked into final spots in the bullpen, so that is what our pen is going to look like. Taking a look at some of the guys who are going to be sent back down. Luis Ortiz, he struggled. Jose Urena, didn't expect him to do much of anything. He's just a depth guy. Brent's never really had a shot because I was pretty happy with the lefties I already had. Burke struggled. McDougal struggled. Keener was actually pretty good, but he had no shot at making it because he's such a low overall. Snelling was decent. Actually a pretty good spring. I'll be happy with that, but I'm going to send him back down, get him a little more seasoning. He struggled last year, so I'm going to consolidate some of his gains at AAA before getting him back in the majors this year. Quinn Priester also had pretty good. I just don't quite have a slot for him. Plus, unfortunately, he has options left. So, guys like Pearson are out of options. So that means Pearson's going to win because of that. Another guy who's out of options is Juan Fen. He has used up all of his options. And despite having another pretty good spring training, I'm going to send him back down. And actually, I'm just going to trade him because I don't have any room for him down. Or I don't want to try to pass him to waivers and lose him for nothing, so I'm going to just send him somewhere in a small little deal. Looking at our lineups, not going to make any changes. All the guys in the lineups I showed you just a couple of moments ago are going to be staying there. As far as our bench goes, we are going to be keeping Adam Hackenberg as our backup catcher, Leover Peguero as our middle infield depth, also a guy who hits lefties pretty well. Dominic Fletcher, who's going to continue to be a left-handed bat off the bench for us. I think that's a role he's best suited for. And then Stuart Fairchild, as I mentioned at the top, one of the guys we brought in free agency, good all-around offering there, especially with the bat against left-handed pitchers. As mentioned, we are going to be moving Juan Fen because he is out of options. I'm going to be sending him to the Milwaukee Brewers, who could use some bullpen depth right now. As you look at their bullpen, does not look super great outside of Devin Williams and Abner Uribe. So they could use some guys who could give them some upside. And I think Juan Fen can offer that. In return, we're not going to get anything too crazy. It's just a 22-year-old reliever, Matt Buck, 58 overall, see potential. Not quite sure what he is, in terms of potential, but nothing that's going to be too crazy, but it does give us some depth in our bullpen. Finally, let's take one final look at how our roster is looking by comparison to the rest of the league. Before we end this episode, you see we're sitting at the 25th overall ranked team. Nothing really stands out too much for us. We are top 15 in power, but beyond that, we definitely have a lot of work to do. That being said, I think we got some decent players in this roster. We don't have any superstars, obviously, as you look at us right now. Only 3 guys 80 or above, but I think the collection of talent on this roster can do some things. And hey, we're still looking to build for the future. So take a look at the schedule. I was considering doing the next episode with a start with our new acquisition, Griffin Canning. But I think I'm actually going to give Kobe Allard some love after a good season last year and a pretty good spring training. We're going to see what the lefty can do for us. But in the meantime, between time, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm gone. Deuces.